Hello and welcome to another edition of Read with Ronald. I'm Ronald, and today this video is going to be a continuation of my Flashpoint video where I will be talking about Falcon 7 and Flashpoint together. So with that being said, before we get into the video, I do have some things to say. First, a spoiler warning. I'm not really going over the plots like this, but I am, so the plots are probably going to be spoiled. So if you don't want to be spoiled, thanks for watching up to this point, but feel free to come back after you've read both books if you would like to hear what I have to say on them. And number 2 is a dog warning to let you know that if you hear any noise in the background, it's probably one of the two dogs. Just letting you know. And so with that being said, I do have a tie-in scripture that actually ties into both books. The tie-in scripture is Romans 12:17-19, King James Version. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. You should not seek revenge because, first of all, it's a sin. That's number 1. But also number 2, revenge eats you up, right? Revenge comes from feelings of unforgiveness, and that eats you up, and that causes you to act out of character. And unforgiveness is also a sin. And you should not want to operate out of unforgiveness because not only does it cause you to act out of character, it affects the people you care about. And it affects how you interact with those people. It just does a lot of things to your spirit, and it's not a place you would want to be. Like it just weighs heavily on you, and it's not a place you want to be. So what I would encourage you, if you're having feelings of unforgiveness and feelings of I need to get back at them, get my lick back, I would encourage you to just turn it over to the Lord. Just pray to the Lord, cast your cares upon him, tell him everything, leave nothing out, okay? Just give it all to him. Like, that's one thing I can say. It don't have to be pretty. It can be messy. It can be like, Lord, they did this to me, and this is how I'm feeling, and this is what I want to do, and da-da-da-this and da-da-da. Tell the Lord everything. Let it all out in his presence. And then allow him to take that burden on from you. Allow him to fill you up with his spirit of love, his spirit of forgiveness. It's not going to be instantaneous. It's going to be a process. It's going to take some work. You probably going to have to be on the threshing floor a few times praying and asking the Lord to help you forgive and help you to move on. But it's going to be worth it. And so that's what I want to encourage you to do. But in order to do that, you have to have a relationship with the Lord built on love and on trust. Not one out of obligation, not one out of fear. It has to be a relationship built out of the desire to truly live for the Lord. And so I want to encourage you all to build that relationship with the Lord today. And with that being said, let's get into the video. So Flashpoint and Falcon 7. So if you've watched my videos on both of those books, you would know that I hated Falcon 7, but I liked Flashpoint. Falcon 7, in the video I gave it a 3. I ended up having to lower that score to a 2 because of later books that I read after reading that book that were terrible, and I could not justify giving them a 3. But Falcon 7 was still worse than those books, so I had to lower that score to a 2 because I couldn't justify giving them books a 3. Falcon 7 final score is a 2. I hated it, right? And Flashpoint final score is a 4. I liked it. So I want to talk about both of them together because they're written by the same author. I want to talk about what I liked about Flashpoint, what I didn't like about Falcon 7, why this author was able to have 2 different types of reactions to his books from me, and why I think that is. So let's talk about why I hated Falcon 7 just real quick. Because if you want my full in-depth why I hated it, just go check out my video. I gave it all. But why I hated it was because I felt like it was too political. And there's nothing wrong with being political in a book. A lot of work can be political, and it can take a political stance and be well done. I feel like in this book, it wasn't well done. I feel like in this book, the political stances were shoved into the story. They didn't meld well with the storyline. Like, they would just be introduced out of nowhere. And I feel like they should have been ingratiated into the storyline better than what they were. Flashpoint had political stances put in them, but they worked well with the story. They felt natural coming out of the characters' mouths. It felt like those characters believed what they were saying, and it fit within the context of the storyline. In Falcon 7, the political standpoints didn't fit the context. It literally felt like Jack John pulled that mess out of nowhere and used it in situations where it didn't make sense to use them at. Whereas in Flashpoint, it just naturally came up in conversation. Yes, I would be rolling my eyes reading it sometimes, but it made sense that these characters would say these things. It made sense that these characters would feel this way. It came up, right? And so I just want to go ahead and say this off the bat because it's going to tie into everything. Both of these books take place in the Middle East, right? And I feel like the reason why Flashpoint was able to put the points in there so naturally, whereas Falcon 7 was just was because of the times that they were published in. Flashpoint was published in 2000. I feel like had Flashpoint been published just even 2 years later, it would have been a completely different book because of the events in the world that had taken place. Falcon 7, it was published in like the late 2000s, early 2010s. And it shows because it criticizes the government of the time. It criticizes them and claims that they are not doing well at all as a government. It has a lot to say about the situation in the Middle East, and a lot of it is annoying to read because it feels shoved in there. The sentiments really aren't that different in either of the books, if I'm being honest, but like I said, it's the way that they're put in that causes all the difference. And so then we get into the protagonists of these books. John Jack Kasky for Falcon 7 and Sean Trey Woods for Flashpoint, right? I hated both of them. I didn't like either of their characters. But Jack John was insufferable and he was badly written. Like I said in Falcon 7, the book would shift and move around to make Jack John right. In situations where it would not make sense for people to react the way that they did, the book would force them to react that way. It wasn't natural. And it would shift and move around to make Jack John be right. And it was annoying because it's like, he's not right. And in my opinion, he hasn't improved his point on why these people should help him. All he did was just come at them sideways and come at them crazy. And y'all telling me they willing to help him because he came at them sideways and came at them crazy? That doesn't make sense. Whereas in Flashpoint, Woods was annoying. He was very much annoying. And he got on my nerves and I did not like his character. But like I said in my Flashpoint video, his character was well written. He was fleshed out and the people around him didn't let him talk to them any type of way. They called him out. They questioned his decisions. They told him when he was wrong. But when he was right, they supported him. When they believed in what he was doing, they supported him. And it made sense. It made sense because he actually had to work to prove what he was saying was the truth, right? That's why the book worked for me in regards to their characters. Even though I hated both of their characters and I was annoyed with both of them, in the case of Flashpoint, Woods worked because the people around him acted like people and acted like people with differing opinions from him. Whereas in Falcon 7, the people had differing opinions, but it was like the book would be like, you got to agree with him, so they would agree with him. And it was like, that don't even make sense. He didn't even successfully convince them, in my opinion. And so this kind of leads into this idea of being the hero, because this also leads into why one worked and the other didn't. Both of them wanted to be the hero. Falcon 7 said, Jack John is a hero. He's accomplished this, he's accomplished that, he's done this, he's done that. But there was no evidence in the storyline. Like I said in the story, the man they told us Jack John was did not match up with who he was in the story. In Flashpoint, Woods was never said to be a hero. He walked around like he was big and bad and a hero, but when it came down to it, that man was scared every time. He wanted to be the hero. Until it came time to be the hero, then he was like, I don't know if I want to be the hero no more. He talked all of that stuff. But then when it came down to it, it was like, I don't know. You know, I ain't trying to die out here. And I was like, but I thought you was talking all of that stuff about how you was willing to lay down your life. You want everybody else to put their stuff on the line, but when it came time to put your stuff on the line, all of a sudden it's, I don't know. What you mean you don't know? You was doing all of this. Jack John did all of this too. But the thing is they both had this like desire to be the hero and to like want to do what they thought was right, and they did what they wanted to do. And I wouldn't even say there was consequences because both of them got away with it. I feel like both of these storylines, low-key, were kind of like a male escapist fantasy kind of. Like, you see these men who shouldn't be able to accomplish what they accomplish, and they get to be the hero, and they get to go about it in ways that aren't considered right, aren't considered conventional, and they get to get away with it, and everybody's just happy because, oh, they accomplished the goal, and nobody calls them out for what they did. It's fantasy. It's fantasy that's grounded in reality. And I think that also leads into why I had the reactions I did to these books. Falcon 7, like, that was fantasy all the way. Like, oh my gosh. But it was bad fantasy. It was badly written. The characters ain't make sense. Nothing about the story made sense. And then for it to be like, oh, we helped you do it covertly, and he just wasn't even smart enough to realize that, it was ridiculous. The Flashpoint was also fantasy, but it was grounded in reality. It made a lot more sense than Falcon 7 did, if that makes sense. And so that's kind of like why I didn't like Falcon 7, but I liked Flashpoint, even though they were like escapist fantasies low-key. Then we get the villains. Both books had the same issue, the villains, which was the villains were barely present in the story. They caused these big, huge world events, but then they're barely present. We don't get no explanation for why they want to do what they want to do other than they hate America. It's even worse in Flashpoint's case, if I'm being honest, because the villain just gets killed. We never get no explanation for why he did what he did. We don't get nothing from him other than he just hates America. And it's the same with Falcon 7. Like, overall, why Falcon 7 didn't work is because it just didn't make sense. Like, none of it made sense. And like I said when I talked about the story, who they said the main character was did not match who we got. And he should not have been as successful as he was, because the way he went about things literally made zero sense. Just go watch my video. You will get the full understanding. Flashpoint, on the other hand, I liked it because the story made sense. Even though the protagonist was annoying, the people around him reacted realistically. It made sense. And so the one thing I can say about both books is that the reason I bring up vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, is because a lot of these books were driven by revenge and wanting to get their get back against the people who did them wrong, right? I would say this. It worked better in Flashpoint than it did in Falcon 7. In Falcon 7, and this is another reason why Falcon 7 didn't work for me, none of these people had no connection to what had caused the events. None of them had any connection to it other than they Americans. They had like the most basic connection, but the way Jack John was acting, you would think that he knew these men personally, but he didn't. He met them during the time. In the case of Flashpoint, everybody has a personal connection to what's taking place. It's somebody they knew that it's happened to. So it makes sense that they want to be like, we got to get our get back. And it makes sense. And the story supports it. The story tried to support Jack John and Falcon 7, but it didn't make sense. Flashpoint, it made sense. And so that's why I brought up revenge. Like, because the theme of revenge is in both books, but it's done horribly in Falcon 7, but it's done pretty well in Flashpoint. But vengeance is still the Lord's, saith the Lord. And so that's what I have to say on that. And so with that being said, thank you for tuning into this video. If you liked it, give it a like, a comment. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and check out more content, and I'll see you next time.